What if the man you love most, the father of your unborn children, threw you out into a storm with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart? That's exactly what happened to Rachel Morgan. 7 years later, she returned. Not broken, not begging, but stronger, wiser, and with two little boys who bore a striking resemblance to the man who had betrayed her. As Rachel walked into the glittering celebration meant to crown Ethan Walker's perfect life, she carried with her not just a secret, but the truth that would bring his entire world crashing down. But what Ethan didn't know was that the real earthquake was still coming, because Rachel wasn't just here to reveal the past, she was here to reclaim her future. Stay with us. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's a journey of survival strength and the kind of redemption you'll never forget. The Grand Sterling Hall gleamed under chandeliers the size of small moons. Golden sparks bounced off crystal glasses, laughter floated like champagne bubbles, and the guests dressed in designer gowns and custom suits drifted between tables with carefully rehearsed smiles. At the center of it all, Ethan Walker stood with Vanessa Clark, his perfect fiancée, a woman who seemed sculpted for this flawless life he had built. Tonight was supposed to be the pinnacle of his triumph, wealth, power, prestige, and the beautiful trophy by his side to prove it. Until the doors crashed open. The massive oak doors of the hall groaned as they swung wide, and a strange, heavy silence devoured the music. Mid-note, every head turned. Standing in the doorway, framed by the cold light of the corridor beyond, was a woman Ethan thought he'd erased from his life long ago, Rachel Morgan. She moved forward with a grace that didn't belong to someone who had once been discarded like trash. Her hair, once wild from endless nights of survival, now fell in sleek, polished waves. Her black dress hugged her figure with a quiet authority that made even the boldest guest shrink back. But it wasn't her transformation that froze the room. It was the two boys walking at her sides, identical to Ethan Walker. The same piercing eyes, the same stubborn jawline, even the same faint scar etched into the left eyebrow, an old family mark Ethan thought was his alone. The champagne glass slipped from Ethan's hand, shattering against the marble floor. He didn't even flinch. Vanessa gasped and clutched his arm, hissing under her breath. "Who is that?" Ethan couldn't answer. His throat had closed, his heart pounding so loudly it drowned out every thought. Rachel stopped just short of the dance floor, where towering floral arrangements and eager photographers waited to immortalize what was supposed to be Ethan's happiest night. She let go of the boys' hands. They stood proudly unafraid, just like their mother. Rachel lifted her chin, her voice slicing through the heavy silence. "Ethan, allow me to introduce your sons." Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. Cameras clicked, whispers ignited like sparks. Vanessa recoiled as if stung. "This is a joke." She spat, her voice trembling with panic. "It has to be a joke." Rachel's gaze never left Ethan, and in her eyes was not rage, not the fury he had expected, but something infinitely more dangerous: truth. 7 years ago, when lies twisted like vipers around her, Ethan had made his choice without hesitation. He chose to believe the rumors. He chose to throw her away, pregnant, defenseless, alone. "You didn't just expel me," Rachel said, her voice calm but sharp as shattered glass. "You expelled them before they ever took their first breath." Ethan staggered back as if struck. The world he so carefully constructed, the world built on denial and pride, began to crack right there in front of hundreds of witnesses. "No!" he croaked, barely audible. Rachel gave him a sad, almost tender smile. Not of victory, but of finality. "I didn't come to destroy your celebration, Ethan. I simply thought the truth deserved its moment too." She knelt briefly to adjust one of the boys' collars, her hands steady, motherly, proud. "Come, boys," she said softly. And without waiting for permission, Rachel Morgan turned her back on the Grand Sterling Hall. The massive doors opened once more, not with violence this time, but with quiet majesty, as if even the building itself recognized her dignity. Two boys followed close behind her, their tiny shoulders squared like soldiers. Behind them, Ethan's kingdom crumbled, first in murmurs, then in shattered reputations, And finally, in the awful, deafening silence of a man realizing he had lost something more precious than wealth, more precious than status, something he could never ever reclaim. But what Ethan didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this public humiliation was only the beginning. The real earthquake was yet to come. Rachel Morgan didn't look back. Not once. She walked steadily through the glittering crowd, her black heels tapping sharply against the marble floor. Like a heartbeat, Caleb and Liam flanked her, mimicking her, calm, unaware that the world behind them was splintering into chaos. Outside the Grand Sterling Hall, the night air was sharp and cold, cutting through her thin dress. Rachel inhaled deeply, filling her lungs with the electric taste of freedom. This wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. Meanwhile, inside the hall, Ethan Walker stood frozen, surrounded by whispers and stares that pierced deeper than any blade. Vanessa's hand tightened painfully around his arm. "You lied to me," she hissed, her manicured nails digging into his skin. "You said she was nothing." "I didn't know," Ethan started, but his voice cracked like thin ice. Vanessa stepped back, her face twisted with disgust. "You're a fool, Ethan. You let your future walk out that door." She turned sharply and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Ethan alone amid the wreckage of his perfect life. Photographers, guests, investors. They all watched, some with pity, most with thinly veiled satisfaction. Ethan Walker, the man who had it all. Now the man who had nothing. Rachel hailed a cab and directed it toward the modest two-bedroom apartment she rented across town. In the back seat, Caleb leaned against her shoulder sleepily, while Liam stared out the window, his small hand clutching the hem of her dress. "You did good, boys," she whispered, pressing a kiss to Caleb's forehead. "You were so brave." Inside her apartment, worn but clean, Rachel tucked the boys into their bunk beds. She sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug, staring into the dark. Tonight had been necessary, but it was also dangerous. Old wounds had been reopened, old enemies awakened. Rachel knew Ethan and the people around him wouldn't let this go quietly, especially not now. Especially not after what she had discovered 7 years earlier. Under the pounding rain and the cold iron gates, Ethan had turned his back on her. He hadn't even given her a chance to defend herself against the fabricated accusations. In the months that followed, Rachel lived on the streets pregnant and alone. She had clawed her way back to life with nothing but raw determination, sheer grit, and a heart that refused to quit. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was survival, working 2 jobs as a janitor and taking night classes at Willowbrook University. She slept in shelters, skipped meals to feed the twins, and studied formulas and legal codes scribbled on scraps of cardboard. She had built everything from scratch, without Ethan, without pity, without shortcuts. And now she wasn't just surviving. She was winning. But there was something Ethan didn't know yet, something even Rachel hadn't revealed tonight. It wasn't just about the boys. Rachel had discovered the real reason she had been thrown away like trash all those years ago. It had nothing to do with loyalty or love. It was betrayal of another kind, a darker kind. Back then, Ethan's business partner Matthew Davis and his lover Vanessa Clark had plotted to remove Rachel from Ethan's life, to clear the way for shady investments and power grabs. Rachel had stumbled too close to the truth without realizing it. And the fastest way to eliminate a threat, destroy her reputation, destroy her name. They had succeeded until now. Rachel had proof: emails, financial records, secret meetings, all carefully gathered over months of relentless digging. She wasn't going to scream, accuse, or beg. No, she was going to dismantle their empire brick by brick, just like they had tried to dismantle her life. The next morning, Rachel dropped the boys off at school. As she stepped out of the car, a black SUV idled at the curb across the street. Her instincts prickled. Inside, behind dark-tinted windows, someone was watching. Rachel didn't flinch. She adjusted her sunglasses, smiled at her boys, and walked away, like she hadn't noticed a thing. But inside, the fire blazed higher. Back at Horizon Biotech, the company Rachel secretly built under another name. Her office buzzed with energy. Projects were booming, investors lined up. She was no longer the girl crying in the rain. She was a force. She sat behind her desk and opened a folder labeled simply, "The Reckoning." Inside, the evidence against Ethan, Matthew, and Vanessa waited. It was almost time to pull the trigger, but Rachel hesitated, not out of fear, out of strategy. The right move wasn't destroying them in secret. The right move was exposing them in front of the world that had once cheered them on. Public, irrefutable, final. Meanwhile, Ethan spiraled after the confrontation at the Grand Sterling Hall. His reputation took a hit. Rumors swirled questions about the twins about his past. But worse than the gossip was the guilt. Every night, Ethan lay awake replaying memories of Rachel, her laugh, her fierce loyalty. The way she used to look at him as if he were her whole world, and he had thrown it away for lies. Now he couldn't even look at himself in the mirror without seeing the monster he had become. One afternoon, desperate, Ethan drove to Sunrise Hope Center, the very shelter Rachel had once stayed in. He stood outside for an hour before working up the nerve to walk inside. There, among the chipped paint and the smell of cafeteria food, he caught glimpses of the woman he had abandoned, the strength she had forged in fire. And for the first time, Ethan realized it wasn't just forgiveness he needed, it was redemption. But he didn't know if he was worthy of it. Rachel's plan accelerated. The Global Biotech Summit, an international gathering of the biggest names in pharmaceuticals, was only weeks away. All three of them, Ethan, Matthew, and Vanessa, would be honored for ethical contributions to science. It was too perfect. The stage would be theirs until Rachel seized it. There would be no shouting, no accusations, only the cold, hard truth revealed on the biggest platform possible. Rachel wouldn't just reclaim her name, she would rewrite her story on her terms. As the sun dipped behind the horizon that evening, Rachel stood on the balcony of her apartment, watching Caleb and Liam kick a soccer ball back and forth in the courtyard. For a brief moment, peace brushed her skin like a summer breeze. She thought of the past, the pain, the survival, the war still ahead. And yet, despite it all, Rachel smiled. Because no matter what happened next, she had already won the only battle that mattered. She had never let them break her. If you were Rachel, would you choose revenge or justice? And why? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your point of view. Also, don't forget, comment below which country you're watching from. And if you felt Rachel's strength deep inside, share this video with someone who believes in second chances too. The Global Biotech Summit was a dazzling event, a sea of sparkling gowns, sharp tuxedos, and champagne glasses raised in endless toasts. Tonight, Horizon Biotech's biggest competitors, Ethan Walker, Matthew Davis, and Vanessa Clark, would be honored for their so-called ethical contributions to science. But Rachel Morgan wasn't there to celebrate. She was there to tell the truth. As the grand hall filled with applause, the large screens began playing a carefully crafted video scenes of charity events, research breakthroughs, smiling children benefiting from medical aid. Everything looked perfect, polished, untouchable, until the screen flickered and changed. Suddenly, confidential emails flashed across the massive monitors. Financial records, secret recordings, and conversations exposing how Matthew and Vanessa conspired years ago to destroy Rachel's life to seize control of Ethan's fortune and career. The audio of Matthew's smug voice echoed through the hall. Rachel's a problem. Remove her and Ethan's ours to control. Then Vanessa's unmistakable laugh followed, cold and triumphant. The room froze. Ethan's face drained of color. Vanessa's wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering at her feet. Matthew bolted up from his seat, his mouth opening and closing, but no words came. The audience's stunned silence twisted into murmurs, into gasps, and finally into a thundering storm of outrage. The media cameras turned away from the stage and onto the disgraced trio, capturing every humiliating second. And at the back of the room, standing tall in a simple black dress, was Rachel. She didn't gloat, she didn't smirk, she simply watched, calm, dignified, unbreakable. This wasn't revenge, this was justice. In the aftermath, Horizon Biotech soared while Ethan's world burned down. Matthew and Vanessa faced investigations, lost everything, and quickly became social pariahs. And Ethan, he disappeared from the public eye. For weeks, Rachel heard nothing. She moved forward as she always had, focused on her sons and her growing company. Until one evening, as she picked up Caleb and Liam from soccer practice, she saw him standing awkwardly near the field's edge, holding a worn soccer ball under one arm, wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt stripped of his arrogance. Stripped of his titles stood Ethan. He wasn't the same man. He looked smaller somehow, not in size but in presence. He caught her gaze and didn't look away. Later that evening, sitting outside on the old bleachers while the boys played nearby, Ethan finally spoke. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," he said, voice low. "I don't deserve it." Rachel said nothing, waiting. He swallowed hard. "I just want to be part of their lives if you'll let me. Not to rewrite the past, just to be better for them." Rachel's heart twisted. Part of her wanted to turn away, to protect the fortress she had built so fiercely. But another part, a deeper, stronger part, whispered that maybe the true victory wasn't just surviving betrayal. Maybe the real victory was choosing compassion without erasing the pain. Weeks turned into months. Ethan showed up. Not with grand promises or flashy gestures, but with time, with consistency. Saturday mornings at soccer practice, Sunday afternoons helping with school projects, Tuesday nights reading bedtime stories awkwardly but determinedly. Little by little, he began to earn Caleb and Liam's trust. And maybe a small space in Rachel's guarded heart too. Not because she needed him, but because the boys deserved the chance to know their father, not the man he was, but the man he was trying to become. One evening, sitting together in the living room after dinner, Caleb ran up with a crayon drawing. It showed 4 stick figures, all holding hands: Caleb, Liam, Rachel, and Ethan. Above them, in messy letters, he had written, "Our family." Rachel pressed the drawing against her chest, her throat tightening with emotions too big for words. She looked at Ethan, and for the first time she smiled, not out of pain, not out of bitterness, but out of hope. Hope that even shattered lives could be rebuilt. Hope that even after the worst betrayals, love, real, imperfect, patient love, could still find a way back. How did this story make you feel? Did Rachel's journey inspire you the way it inspired us? If you believe in second chances and strength through adversity, comment 99 below and tell us where you're watching from. If this story touched your heart, please share this video with friends and family. Let's spread the power of hope and forgiveness together.